Good evening, I'm Jen Johnson and welcome to our 6 News Scrapbook, a WJAC 70th anniversary special. For 7 decades, our cameras have been rolling here at WJAC TV. Our local television station first went on the air on September 15th, 1949. For 7 decades, you've been able to count on us for reliable coverage. There's value in being able to look back at our past. We've been to countless events and shared the stories of so many people with you. Whether it was day-to-day coverage, groundbreaking details, or national headlines. Then there's the stories we'll never forget.
This is a WJAC TV News Center 6 special report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Brown. We'll be returning to NBC's coverage in just a moment, where we want to report a very unstable situation in our own area, reacting to the national terrorist attacks.
A call from Cleveland Center, Air Traffic Control Center, advising them that there was an aircraft northwest of the tower position descending through 6,000 feet, and they said it was a 757.
The attacks of September 11th, 2001 rocked the U.S. and forever changed our lives. A series of 4 coordinated terrorist attacks were planned by al-Qaeda. 2 of the planes crashed into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center. A 3rd crashed into the Pentagon. The 4th, United Airlines Flight 93, was initially headed towards Washington, D.C. It went down into a field in Stony Creek Township near Shanksville after its 40 passengers and crew foiled the hijackers' plan.
Of course, this is still time to remember the victims of Flight 93. This is just a temporary memorial, but already so many flags, flowers, and messages of support. Now there's talk of building a permanent memorial here to honor those heroes who spent their final moments of life flying over our region's backyard.
One of the darkest days in history is now honored by the National Flight 93 Memorial that attracts visitors from around the world. Last September, on the 17th anniversary of the attacks, the Tower of Voices was dedicated. It stands at 93 feet right at the entrance of the park, and inside are 40 chimes, representing each one of the passengers and crew on board.
The winds carried their voices, and that made this always a living, breathing memorial.
It's an audible reminder of the strength and sacrifice of those on Flight 93.
The motto was 9 for 9, and soon we're going to watch it become 9 for 9.
July 24, 2002, miners were assigned to work in the Q Creek mine in Somerset County, not knowing a multiple-day rescue effort would ensue just a few hours into their shift. For 77 hours, those coal miners were trapped hundreds of feet below the surface, while millions of gallons of water flooded the mine. A 6-inch hole was drilled by rescuers to pump in air from the surface as water was being pumped out.
Well, I said that they're alive, and then they wanted to know how we knew. I said, well, they just beat on the drill rod. And I don't think they quite believed us at first. And then they did it again, and everybody heard it. And it was a pretty good feeling.
We were all watching as one by one the miners were brought up in a cage until the 9th one was rescued on July 28th. 9 for 9, all accounted for, all alive.
All the people that was there and rescued, we can't thank you enough. The people from the hospital, all the rescue people, the people that sent all the pumps, they're the reason we're alive. All the people in America that prayed for us and everything. I mean, that's the only reason we're here.
We found other notable stories deeper in the WJAC archives, stories that you may have heard about or even remember.
He was waiting for them. They were targeted, and that whole premise, you know, there was no, again, hate crime. We didn't think of it as a hate crime because nobody knew what hate crimes were. We didn't have, that was not this community.
An interracial couple was shot on the Washington Street Bridge in Johnstown. The alleged sniper, Joseph Paul Franklin, was sitting on a hillside just yards from the bridge. The double homicide came as a shock to the community.
Franklin, an avowed racist who shot people in other cities. I don't even think that anybody thought, to the best of my recollection when it happened, nobody thought hate crime. We just thought the 2 people that were walking across. It was almost like, were they in the wrong place at the wrong time?
16-year-old Kathleen McCullough and 22-year-old Arthur Smothers died from their injuries. Franklin eventually admitted to the murders, plus multiple other crimes he committed. He was sentenced to death in Missouri in November 2013. In our 70 years, we also saw a shift in media coverage.
The freed Americans came off the plane tired, but happy. During the flight from Algiers, they had all been given new military parkas, and they had eaten a turkey dinner.
On January 20th, 1981, 52 Americans who had been held hostage in Iran for 444 days were released, including Sergeant Regis Regan from Johnstown's Cambria City neighborhood.
It was an international story that captivated people around the world, and we had a local connection. And, you know, to just try to put that in your mind that this is a Johnstowner who's one of those people that's over there.
The Americans were greeted by hundreds of people when the plane carrying them home landed. People cheered, waved American flags, and sang "America the Beautiful." Sergeant Regan accepted an invitation to Johnstown High School to address the student body. He answered dozens of questions and was presented with several awards, among them a Bible, because he said he had all of his religious articles taken from him in Iran.
We were not allowed to speak, even though I was in a room with 5 other guys. I started my own program and I kept to it. Believe it or not, you know, I was doing 500 or 700 sit-ups a day at one time.
Tragedy struck the community of Johnstown when a commuter flight from Pittsburgh crashed just short of the runway into the Johnstown-Cambria County Airport in January 1974.
Does this aircraft carry a flight recorder? No, sir, it does not. None is required for this type of aircraft. The flight data recorder or cockpit voice recorder or both would be very helpful in this situation, and hopefully in the future that they will be installed. However, they're not required in this type of operation now.
There were 17 people on board and only 5 survivors.
Pretty near all of them were outside of the plane. They were almost all throughout. There was 2 that was trapped inside the plane that we had to take out later. But the rest of them, there was 4 or 5 of them laying at the open door where the door was on the plane. The rest of them were just scattered all over out here.
If you go out to where the end of the runway where that plane came in, where now there were flashing lights, there weren't lights in. It literally ran into a hillside. He was too low and didn't realize because he couldn't see. But the impact of that, because that was something, those were the kinds of stories that happen somewhere else. They don't happen here.
We dug back even deeper into our archives to give you a glimpse at just how it all began 70 years ago and how we've evolved to where we are today. Coming up, we'll take a look down memory lane.
Well, when I started, the news department was a single office on the first floor with maybe 4 or 5 desks.
A big part of the news industry today is timeliness, what's happening right now throughout our coverage area. But it wasn't always that way. Even something as simple as a live shot took a lot of people and planning.
Yeah, but we had to really plan for it. I mean, it had to be a big event, and it had to be something that we literally would get the news department together and decide how we were going to do this, and all the connections that had to be made. And
due to this and being centralized in Cambria County, Johnstown was a major focus of WJAC's broadcasts until advances in technology made it easier to reach outlying areas.
Now we're a 10-county market and we really cover all 10 counties. Back then we didn't. We were a Johnstown television station, and that's what we covered.
Johnstown could be described as hustling and bustling 70 years ago. Let's take a look.
Downtown was open on Thursday nights because that was payday for Bethlehem Steel.
People flocked to downtown Johnstown to shop at department stores like the Glosser Brothers on Locust and Franklin Street and Penn Traffic on Washington Street.
It was really a big deal to come downtown. People would dress up to come to the department stores especially, and then they would make a night of it too. You know, they'd go shopping and then they'd maybe go to the movies or go see a performer, a comedian. At those theaters. They had those back in the earlier days and earlier years. And yeah, it was a special place. It was very vibrant and alive.
You may recall holidays in the downtown area. Gloucester Brothers sponsoring the local Halloween parade each year and store windows decked out in Christmas decorations.
People would actually wait in line to see the displays when they would open in the windows of Penn Traffic, especially the one on the corner, the big corner window. It was a big, exciting event, if you can imagine that. And a lot of people still remember how that was. They'd line up just to see these big Christmas displays.
Our crews were also on the scene for the grand opening of the Richland Mall. The mall featured gardens, trees, ponds, even a fountain. And it was a place for people of all ages to gather with its unique programs and events.
They did a lot with bringing in celebrities and having contests and having dances and events. They brought in a fishing pond. They set up a fishing pond every year inside the mall. And people would fish for whatever they had in there at that time.
For former 6 News anchor Bill Brown, one memory that stands out is when the Pascarilla family brought Sophia Loren to Hess's store, and he was able to cover the event.
But I decided that I would portray myself as the biggest Sophia Loren fan ever, and I traded off all these assignments so I could get this assignment to cover her. So anyway, at the end of the story, I get her to kiss me on the cheek. So I have actually been kissed on the cheek by Sophia Loren.
Many cities in our area were also divided into different neighborhoods, each with its own ethnic feel.
You had churches, each nationality had its own native language services here. Different nationalities all had their own clubs where they celebrate baptisms and weddings, and some of that stuff still remains, and to an extent it does.
Then came the fading of the post-war industrial boom in the 70s. When we come back, a look at how our cameras captured the economical changes in our area. Hollywood came to Johnstown in the spring of 1976 to film the hockey movie Slapshot, based on the antics of the Johnstown Jets of the North American Hockey League. The cast was led by the legendary Paul Newman. The city of Johnstown became the fictional home of the Charlestown Chiefs. Scenes like this one with Newman and Lindsay Krause were filmed in Central Park. Johnstowners flocked to the park to catch a glimpse of the blue-eyed Newman, who played the role of player-coach Reg Dunlop.
But I think the character is original, the culture is original, and the people are simply fascinating to play. What's your impression of Johnstown itself? I know it has to be very difficult for a superstar to have any kind of privacy. I'll tell you, I find the people in Johnstown a good deal more considerate than I do the people in New York and Los Angeles.
And of course, some of the movie's most memorable scenes were filmed at the Cambria County War Memorial. Many of the Johnstown Jets at the time appeared in the movie, including Steve and Jeff Carlson and Dave Hansen, who portrayed the rough-and-tumble, foil-wearing Hansen brothers. The movie was released in February of 1977, and it remains a cult favorite more than 40 years later. Johnstown was also the site of another major movie production, All the Right Moves.
Why did you come down tonight? I don't know. I thought maybe the camera would shoot on me and I'd be discovered and maybe make $1 million or something.
I wanted to see what how a movie was made. I want to be in pictures. I just like to be in and be able to point at the screen and say, "There's me."
All the Right Moves was filmed in Johnstown in 1983. Actor Tom Cruise portrays a high school football player looking to receive a college football scholarship to escape the economically distressed small town. Otherwise, he'd have to work in the steel mill.
It actually features Central High School, which unfortunately we lost. But after they shut the building down, they just shut it closed it like months earlier. So they let the film company reopen it, and and they shot it inside the high school seats, actually in this recently abandoned high school.
Our crews were on the field as thousands of people filled the stands of Point Stadium to be part of the movie. And you may remember some rainy weather in the second half of the game in the movie. This is a behind-the-scenes look at the Johnstown Fire Department using hoses to create that artificial downpour. And it was in the scenes and all the right moves that captured a glimpse of the path Johnstown was headed down. Iron and steel drove Johnstown's economy from the 1850s up through the 1980s and early 1990s. In 1923, Cambria Steel sold to Bethlehem Steel.
1950s was a new era in many ways. Unions were recognized for the first time in the late, beginning and during the Second World War. But by the early 1950s, income was getting spread around more. Steel workers rose out of poverty and could take a vacation, buy a car, build a home in the suburbs. So people remember those as the good times.
But as time confirmed, nothing lasts forever.
By the 1970s, though, things did really, you start seeing the first shadows on this industry that Johnstown really was and had been a one industry town.
This is when Johnstown Area Regional Industries was formed and the town began to look at diversification. Bethlehem Steel followed the changing of times and began looking at new markets. Then the unexpected hit.
Attention, this is the police. All civilians off of the streets in the city of Johnstown. This is an emergency.
And I will never forget, I was in waist-deep water that day.
Death, destruction, and the desire to rebuild all came with the Johnstown flood of 1977.
This is Main Street in Johnstown, the flood-free city, or so we thought until the rains hit yesterday afternoon and last evening and all during the night. I'm standing right in front of the Embassy Theater, and our photographer is now panning down towards City Hall, and the devastation is just unbelievable.
One of the most chilling memories, my photographer and I were crossing Market Street, going from City Hall to what now is Lee Hospital campus, used to be the Big J Plaza, and we were cutting diagonally across Main, and what is that, Market, I guess. We were halfway in waist-deep water, black, really foul water, and there was a state policeman standing on the opposite where we were headed towards the corner, or at the corner of the street where we were going, and he yelled out, he said, "Hey, Marty," he said, "better be careful. There are open manhole covers."
Property damage reached into the millions of dollars. Houses were torn down to nothing. But as we learned from talking with people, one thing the floodwaters couldn't take away was their spirit.
Their attitude was just, to this day, it still astounds me. But that was this, people talk, they say it's a Chamber of Commerce thing about spirit, Johnstown spirit. Oh, no, 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 no. It is real. It is heartfelt. It is stoked in history. Families were born here, raised here, and they're not going anywhere. This was their home.
The flood also took a toll on many businesses in the area. Some closed down completely, while others, such as Bethlehem Steel, tried to carry on.
Went from open hearth steel making to electric, they had these two giant electric arc furnaces. All of a sudden, you went from 12,000 employees to about 2,500. So Johnstown, went to having 25% unemployment during the early to mid 80s.
It generates tremendous amount of business. I've been involved because I realize you have to get the big contractors in to see what's available in this area.
After the downsizing of Bethlehem Steel and the effects of the '77 flood, the city of Johnstown slowly got back on its feet through defense contract work. Longtime Congressman John Murtha was pivotal in helping to attract new business to the area and acquiring lucrative contracts that created countless jobs. Murtha's position as the chairman on the House Appropriations Defense Subcommittee was pivotal in the city's economic rebound.
It used to be we had the reputation, the only thing people knew about us was a flood. They knew nothing else. Now we're finding people know that we're a hub for advancement, we're a hub for expansion, and we're a hub for technical type work.
Murtha passed away in February 2010. His funeral brought several top politicians and dignitaries and his constituents to pay their respects. We'll be right back after this.
We in this business who worked in the time that we worked in the last 70 years were blessed because we weren't, but the business was a trailblazer and we were a part of that.
As our program comes to a close, we realize there's not enough time to recap everything we've covered over the last 70 years. This was a quick glimpse of some memories told by those who have made an impact on this area as much as this area has had an impact on them. If you watched us in the 1980s, you might remember this. Preserving our history to understand where we came from, what we went through, and who we are today. Thank you for tuning in to our 6 News Scrapbook, a WJAC TV 70th anniversary special. And thank you for choosing WJAC and being here with us through the years and memories as we continue to serve millions atop the Alleghenies. Some memories worth celebrating and some so tragic we'll never forget them. As we approach our 70th anniversary this September, we look forward to bringing you more special programs like this one. We'll bring you the best of our amazing sports archives, plus a look back at the people who helped to define WJAC as a legacy local TV station. And don't forget our Throwback Thursday editions each week. You can find all of this on our Facebook page and our website, WJACTV.com.
From military stealth